Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition is The Hunt for Red October, brought to us by High Tech Expressions. The Hunt for Red October is based on the 1990 film of the same name, which was also based on the Tom Clancy novel. The film featured an all-star cast including Sean Connery, Alec Baldwin, Sam Neill, James Earl Jones, and even Tim Curry. The basic plot for the movie features a Russian sub that defects from Russia and is set to be sunk by both the US and Russia. It has a silent drive that will leave it undetectable by anyone, but of course that ends up failing. In order to avoid being captured and destroyed, the Red October must do some evasive maneuvers all throughout some underground tunnels and try to escape from all the other enemies. And that is what the game tries its best to replicate. So here we go with The Hunt for Red October for the Nintendo Entertainment System. After our opening title screen showing our publisher High Tech and our designer Beam Software, we then go into the storyline for the game. After the opening story, we then get to actually see the Paramount logo, followed by the High Tech Expression logo, and then it actually goes into kind of an opening cinematic, showing radar trying to detect the submarine. I press start just as the Hunt for Red October logo is fading away, and I jump into the first level of the game. The game is broken up into two different styles of gameplay. The submarine levels that make up almost the entire length of the game, and then the final level of the game where we actually are on foot and have to disarm bombs. You have two different types of missiles. One that fires straight out, and the other one that fires straight up in the air, and they're represented by different counters on the right side of the screen. You can also see that you have your ECM, which basically is an electronic field that goes around you that you can use with the select button that won't protect you from missiles, but it does send missiles coming towards you with homing abilities, sending them away from you, allowing them to crash into other things. Now, I will use this a little bit, but honestly, it's sometimes easier and even more fun to try to maneuver around different pathways in order to get to missiles to run into different things altogether. One of the good things about the game is that it's rather straightforward. Your goal is pretty much to get from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, going through all kinds of caves, watching for all types of different enemies, different missiles, and then destroy a boss at the end of the level. The only exception, of course, to this is the final stage of the game, which does have you running around a little bit. Also at the bottom, you have your timer, which you can see on the left side next to the armor and power meters. Above that is also the amount of subs you currently have left, aka your extra lives. And above the armor and power directly is your score, which we currently have 500. What you mainly have to focus on is what your current armor is. Of course, if that reaches 0, you end up losing a life. Now, the power meter itself represents, I'm pretty sure, the amount of power in the missiles that you're firing out. So if you have a full power meter, the missiles you fire out will do more damage to things. This isn't necessary technically because you can still destroy enemies with weaker missiles, though of course it's going to be tougher. For the first boss of the game, it's just a giant wall that we have to destroy with a few enemies trying to bother us. Now, I can technically go back and destroy this missile launcher, but if I keep moving up and down just slightly, all the missiles it fires out will just go right above me and miss me altogether, and I can keep firing at the wall. What you have to do is keep firing at the wall until the hole gets huge enough that you can fully fit through, and you have to be careful because sometimes it'll look like you can go through it, but it isn't quite destroyed yet. Once you complete a level in the game, you'll get kind of to see the sub rise up, your score will rack up, and then you'll get some storyline. The game definitely loves its cutscenes. The only real negative about having so much story in the game is the text scrolls by rather slowly, and if you speed it up by speeding it all at once, it then automatically skips to the next set of dialogue and you won't have a chance to read all the dialogue that's currently on here. So unfortunately, throughout most of the game, I'm just going to let it scroll by slowly to make sure that people will be able to read it. Level number 2 actually introduces more of the trench submarining, that we have to go through these really tight, narrow pathways, watching out for not only the missiles and other enemies still, but also falling rocks that are going to consistently trying to heed our path. There's a variety of different power-ups you can pick up in the game, whether they're the ability to increase your armor, re-increase your power, also increase your electronical field, and of course your missiles. One of the key things about this game, and I highly recommend, is when you get to this level for the first time, and thankfully there are some codes you can use to do some level skipping and other things, so that if whenever you end up game over and you can get right back to where you were, but is maneuvering the sub. Surprising, for a game developed by High-Tech Expressions, I do find the sub movement to be relatively good. And it takes a little bit to get used to, but you can go and turn around and work your way around. And of course, the sub itself is going to control relatively awkwardly, so it does take getting used to, and because of that I recommend a lot of practice. Go in and out of some of the smaller passageways that you're going to be traveling through, and once you kind of get the full hang of exactly how the sub maneuvers, how that when you're going to level yourself out, that the back of the sub can still hit off of different objects. And once you feel comfortable, then really start diving into the later levels of the game. The little bit of practice that you put into it will definitely help you. Now when the waterway opens all the way back up and we're finally able to get back into kind of the open ocean, it's time for the boss fight. For this second boss, well, it's actually really easy. Get up really close and you can actually get inside of this and just straight up attack this thing right here. Now granted, we don't have a lot of power, we actually have no power currently in our meter, so we're going to do a little bit of damage. But you can see that we are destroying the main base here, and there's no enemies to actually attack us, making this an extremely easy boss fight. And after we destroyed it, we can sit back and enjoy a little bit another cutscene before we jump into level number 3. Level number 3 presents a whole new set of challenges. You're in very shallow water, and because of that, there's a couple of new perils to deal with, mainly planes overhead. Now you can destroy these planes, but they keep coming the farther and farther you get into a level, and they keep dropping bombs on you consistently. At any point when you see a yellow plane fly over and drop a parachuting guy, be sure to pick him up, because if you're able to get him to land on top of your sub, you are able to get an extra life. The hardest thing is maneuvering around all these bombs. Like I said, you can fire up and hit these guys, but it is a pain. There's also big battleships that behind them, they're going to drop bombs down below you, so you're going to have to kind of go under the water when you have the opportunity and go completely underneath their explosions. Probably the most annoying enemy overall in the game are these mini subs that attack you, and they're in almost every level from here on out, and they constantly move back and forth towards you and are consistently firing those homing missiles. This is where your electronic field definitely will help you out, getting rid of some of their explosions. And it's a good idea to take these guys out because they seem to consistently drop power-ups, and of course they're always going to be useful to you. Now, one of the other things about the game is it seems like you, of course, can run out of missiles, but throughout playing the game, I've never have run out of missiles. It seems like when I get down below to the 0 count on my missiles, it ends up either resetting or I can just keep firing them. I'm not sure on exactly how this works. I don't think there's a time in the game, though, where you're going to get to the point that you're completely out of any type of ammo and you won't be able to do anything, especially at least against the boss fights, because that's usually the only time I even get close to running out of the missiles. Thankfully, I can hang out near the bottom part of this big coral reef area, and even though there are a lot of planes flying overhead, they aren't able to hit me. When the water opens back up, I recommend taking out any of the little subs that are chasing you down. The boss is at the surface of the water, a giant battleship, and the only real threat to you during this is going to be the mini subs themselves. So kind of dive a little bit, maneuver around in a circle until you can get underneath of them and fire missiles directly up at them. You have at least 2 or 3 of them in the open water, and get used to this because you actually have another boss fight similar to this later on in the game with pretty much the exact same scenario. The giant ship itself you have to destroy by firing missiles up at it, and you can hit it in multiple different locations. As long as you see a little bit of a flash from the giant ship, you know you're doing damage. Take out the 2 panels on the left and right of the ship, and then you can just straight up attack the middle part of the ship, watching out for a few things that the helicopter overhead will drop down at you, but these aren't nearly as annoying as also having them and all the subs. Once it flashes red and keeps blinking, it will be destroyed, and you move on to the next level. The next level of the game has us back underneath in the deep water, and you're going through some more trenches. The trenches here are filled with different spikes on both the top part and the bottom part that you're going to be going through. There's also these cannons here that fire 3 projectiles out at once. Wait for them to fire, and then you can easily move past. You, of course, can fire missiles at them if you want to, and then move past a little bit easier. You're going to find a lot of really tight areas in the game. Sometimes areas look almost impossible to pass, but with the correct maneuvering you can get through. Or you can also fire sometimes at walls or ceilings in order to destroy just a little piece of it, giving you enough room to squeak by with your sub. If it looks like it's really small and you won't be able to get past, try firing a missile first before trying to actually go through it. Another annoying enemy is these ones that just kind of pop out of nowhere from like behind the mountains. They come out and they fire 3 quick missiles and then fade back into the mountain itself. You'll see a bunch of these out of nowhere. Knowing where they are when you play the game multiple times is a big help, or trying to hug a wall close by when they do pop out to try to get those missiles to immediately run into a nearby wall. You of course also can use that electronic field. Also, with the little mini subs, another cool thing is to try to do your best to get them to run into mountains, so you can try to get rid of them altogether. Now, here we go with another boss, and this is probably one of the most annoying bosses in the game. You have little tiny subs that are going to open up and come at you, as well as those mini subs that love to get near you, keep moving back and forth and firing tons of other missiles at you. Unfortunately, I go into this fight with no power, and that is a very bad thing to do because having no extra strength makes this battle, of course, last a lot longer. And since there are so many enemies on screen, it can take a lot of moving back and forth, up and down, to try to drain all the health from this boss. After you see the massive explosion, you still have to survive for a second or two if there's other subs and missiles still on screen, and then finally, you will complete the stage. The next level is kind of a crystal field. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense overall, but basically what's going on here is you have crystals lining both the top and bottom, a lot of narrow passageways is why we've been practicing in some of the other levels for this. You also sometimes have giant missiles kind of bulging out of the walls, trying to take up the much needed space that you have. Other crystals, as you can see, will slowly start to grow up, and you'll have to try to get above them. So don't get too close to the crystals on the bottom or top, because you never know which ones are going to start popping down towards you. Other ones will also fall. One of the ways to avoid at least some of this is by going fast through, trying to even yourself up and just keep on moving. If you see something ahead of you start to fall, of course stop for a second, but keeping on moving will prevent you from getting hit by a lot of the stuff, especially when it's growing, because you'll be able to get past it before it fully grows. This area right here is just too impossible for me to maneuver right through, so I need to fire that missile, destroy a couple of the crystals so I can sneak by and then get through. Since I'm able to maneuver quite well in the game, you don't see that how much damage you really take from running into the enemies in the game. Once again, when the area opens up, we will then grab some missiles and get ready for the boss. And this boss is another tricky boss. Here I'm going to use the electronic field to try to help me a little bit with some of the extra missiles coming my way. You have to wait for the dome to disappear around the boss. Then get inside and destroy the cannon here. Then just park yourself square right here and just keep firing. As long as you survive the battle to make it to this point, you'll be able to win the fight no problem, because none of the other cannons will be able to hit you. Though it's going to take a ton of missiles, especially if you have no power, in order to defeat the boss. So a little bit boring, but at least you won't be able to get killed. I feel the only thing that I really have the biggest problem with in this game is the fact that it only really has one song throughout all the levels, with the exclusion of the final stage, which has its own theme. It kind of drones on you after a while, doesn't it? I wasn't kidding when I said it's going to take a ton of firepower in order to destroy this boss. One of the cool other things about The Hunt for Red October is not only, of course, is it based on the movie, but since it's based on the Tom Clancy novel, this makes it one of the first games based on anything Tom Clancy did. And it's kind of funny to think about that, since how many games have come out in the late 90s into the 2000s and even now this year with the Tom Clancy name on it. As we jump into the next level, it wasn't quite as long of a cutscene as some of the previous stages, and now we're in another one of these shallow water levels. This one works the exact same as the one we did earlier on, with lots of planes flying overhead, dropping bombs down on you, and the mini-subs becoming your biggest threat. Anytime the area opens up just a little, head down so that you can try to avoid some of the stuff falling on you, and just focus on anything coming directly at you. Overall, at least in my opinion, this stage is a lot easier than the previous Crystal Field stage that we were just dealing with. I also have to admit that I played a lot of High-Tech Expressions games and Beam Software, and they're one of my least favorite developers who made games for the NES. However, this one honestly isn't nearly as atrocious as some of those other titles. And if you're looking for something maybe a little bit different for the NES, this one may be worth just a little bit of a look. Controlling a submarine on an NES title doesn't work too badly in this game. And also interesting to note that there were other games based on The Hunt for Red October, and not just based on the film. In fact, there was a game released for many computer consoles called The Hunt for Red October based on the book that combined both a sub-simulator also with a strategy game. It was released actually about 3 years prior to the film coming out. Just like with all the other levels in the game, when the area kind of opens up, we're going to go up to the surface again here, and we have to battle the same boss that we fought earlier on. It's a giant battleship. It has 2 of the spots that you can hit on it, as well as you're going to have to battle the mini-subs. So travel downwards and take out the little mini-subs before then returning to the surface and firing at it. Now, instead of the helicopter though flying overhead like we had in the previous boss, we now have one of those planes dropping the constant little bombs. But overall, still not too much of a threat to us. Just keep moving back and forth and firing the missiles until the ship turns blinking red, and then all of a sudden will completely disappear after enough hits, and we've completed the level and can move on to the next stage. It's now time for the final level of the game, and as you can see with big flashing words, it's time for a sabotage. Yep, a plot that completely destroyed the Red October, and now you must travel throughout the ship and disarm bombs. The gameplay is completely different here. You must disarm the bombs with a very strict time limit that you can see slowly clicking down before the next bomb ends up being destroyed. You also have a limited amount of ammo, which once again seems to roll over once you've reached 0 sometimes. You have a health meter on the right side with the pulsating heart, and of course your life count down below with your score. Now, the way the bombs work is the bombs are set to go off at different times. You can see how many bombs you currently have left by the counter that's located on the upper left side of the clock that is ticking down. However, you can only disarm one bomb at a time, the one that is currently flashing. This becomes the most annoying part of this whole level because you have to quickly find out which one is flashing, and not always is going to be the one closest to you. In fact, in the later parts of this level, the one that's flashing will be on, of course, the complete opposite part of where you currently are. After you disarm all the bombs in an area, there's a hatch, and you can see that it's located to the right of where we are right now. Now when you go through there, the bombs go back up to 6 and you'll have to disarm another whole set of bombs. The good thing is you get your ammo back as well as all your health back. You have to do quite a few of these before the level is finally complete, making this pretty annoying overall. Now you do take fall damage in the game. You'll see here how much health I end up losing from the fall, but thankfully I still have plenty left in order to go through the hatch. On the next part, we immediately have a bomb flashing above us, and we have some guys to deal with. Thankfully, all the guys do go down in one hit, and you can fire in multiple directions. Controlling the main character, though, is definitely clunky, and this is where the game has its biggest flaws while you're trying to make it through. The jumping is far from precise. Thankfully, though, since they gave you the ability to aim in pretty much all directions, this makes this area a lot less tedious and hard than it could have been. The The time limit seems to become a little bit stricter as you go on, but that's mainly due to the fact that the bombs are farther and farther apart, where you'll have one bomb near the top, then have to go all the way to the bottom, and then back up to the top in order to find the next one. It's also a good idea to kill as many of the guys as you can. Even with that supposed limited ammo, it's best to just fire at them, get rid of the guys, because even while you're trying to disarm a bomb, they can launch some shots in on you, and pretty much even if you don't have to go to that platform quite yet, taking out the guys a little bit early definitely won't hurt, because eventually you will have to go up. The worst are the ones that are going to be slightly above you and you have to climb up a ladder in order to get to their platform, and you don't even know a guy's there yet until you've gotten far up the ladder and they've already launched in a bullet or two. It is kind of funny though that they went through all the trouble of adding a second type of gameplay only for the final stage of the game. Now this isn't the only game I've ever played that was also kind of like this. I do still find it interesting. I also feel if this level wasn't nearly as long as it is, with you having to disarm so many bombs, it also wouldn't be so bad. Also, just so you know, in order to disarm the bombs, you don't even have to press any buttons whatsoever. All you have to do is actually just get right on top of the bomb and he'll automatically start disarming it. Here, climb all the way up the ladder, take out this guy up top, and then jump over to the right and disarm the bomb. This is a little bit easier instead of trying to just go straight over there, because you can jump off the ladder at any time. The guy up top, while you're trying to disarm that bomb, will fire shots at you. This is an example of one of those times where we're all the way at the top, then have to travel all the way to the very bottom. Then we're going to be traveling about halfway back up for the next one, and then finally the very top for the final bomb of the area. Of course, they couldn't have this bomb be the final one so that we could be right near the door to exit the area to get to that next section. In this segment, take out the guy immediately above you, then jump up to this platform and fire at the next guy on the top platform. Now, the guy who was below us, we could have taken him out as well, as he does like to fire shots, but the thing about it is, he ends up missing us as the bullet will disappear prior to actually reaching us. And thankfully, they actually put two bombs really close to one another that we get to instantly disarm. Once that one is destroyed though, you will have to work your way down. I recommend falling the short distances instead of using the ladder sometimes, because this will help cut down on a little bit of the very precious time you have in order to disarm the bombs. Here, make a long jump over to the left side and then use the ladder in order to kind of boost your way up. You can use any of the platforms around here to kind of help, but thankfully this is the last one near the top of this section, and now we just have to fall back down and take out the one on the very bottom. There's two guys located here. The one on the very bottom can hit you if he's all the way over to the left, but he seems to get kind of stuck in a loop of just walking back and forth near that final bomb in the very lower right corner. Climb all the way back up to the top and go through the section in order to enter, wow, another section filled with bombs, but thankfully, this is the final section. Start off by immediately dropping down to this platform and taking out the guy. Then thankfully you can fall off the left side here. Try to take out as much of the bomb as you can, get the guy close, and then fire straight downwards in order to hit him. Then jump back up. When you make it up here, you can jump off the ladder over to the right and grab this bomb. I recommend taking out the guy on the very top platform though before heading back down. You have to do a little bit of a jump in order to actually see him. We travel all the way, of course, to the very bottom, and after disarming this one, you can kind of guess where our next bomb will be, right? All the way at the very top where that one guy was. And I just recommend taking him out because this will allow you to just take this ladder all the way to that top platform and not have to worry about the guy firing down on you while you're trying to climb the ladder. I recommend then going down the ladder just a little bit, running all the way over and falling all the way down as long as you have enough health. This way you cut down on a lot of the traveling and potentially having the bombs explode on you. Once this bomb's disarmed, go through the hatch and you can sit back and enjoy the ending to the Hunt for Red October. With the Red October now waving the US flag and the end appearing at the bottom, you then go to a one screen for the credits, getting to see all the people that worked on the game. And that's it. You can then press start at any time in order to go back to the main menu of the game and jump back in and start it all over again. Overall, though, the Hunt for Red October is not the worst licensed game we've seen on the NES, and like I said earlier, definitely not even the worst that High-Tech Expressions has done in the past. But either way, that's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.